Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon and welcome to Chalk Talk. I am your host, Kim Davis. And listen, thank you guys for being flexible today. We had to change the time of the show. Needed to go over and get some work done over at the Texans and then had some other obligations and wanted to make sure that we could still have our guest join us today. That's Kelly Eco, the beat writer for the Houston Rockets, who covers the Rockets for The Athletic. He is going to be joining us in this show. And I'm super excited about that because there's so much to talk about in the world of basketball, and especially as it relates to the Houston Rockets. Many of you have had questions, and you'll be able to ask some of those questions of Kelly today. So thank you for being patient with the time of the show. You know, we have been consistent in our time slot for quite a long time. This is wrapping up our ninth season, our ninth year, if you will, actually, of doing Chalk Talk. We're going to the 10th year starting in September. So thank you for being here. Okay, of course, as always, as we get started with this week's show, we've got to remind you about the cool people that help us do this work and the reason that we're able to be here each and every week. So I want to remind you about a couple of our partners. Of course, you know about Jinka. I love Jinka. It's the turmeric paste. It also now comes in vegan capsules. There's a powder that's going to be coming out in about another month. It's for all things inflammation, right? If you want to make sure, if you've got some pain issues, if you've got some maybe cholesterol challenges or blood pressure, this is a great way that you can naturally address it. You can buy it from their website at ilovejinka.com. And if you are in an HEB, this is where you find it in the healthy living section.
Here at HEB, in the Healthy Living Department of Probiotics, you can find Jinka 7 days a week.
Yeah. Look at that Jinka sale. Look at that Jinka.
So that's where you find it at HEB, and beginning in a couple of weeks, it's going to be in more HEB stores in other parts of Texas. So we appreciate the partnership with I Love Jinka. Also want to tell you about one of our recent partners, and that's Champ. Of course, you got a chance to meet the founder, the co-founder of Champ, Sam Alex, a little while back. He's a veteran, and he and his wife started this organization to really support other veterans. So you can reach out to them at info@champ.net. But also, if you see somebody that is having a crisis, an episode of some sort, the number that we encourage you to call is 988. If you see somebody that you think may be involved in some sort of a mental crisis, dial 988 so that they can get the help they need, that the right people will show up, right? And not necessarily police officers, but the people who are trained to handle those kinds of situations. That number is 988. So we appreciate our partnership with Champ. You're going to be hearing more from them as we go throughout the summer. And welcome to the family. And of course, there are Kimmy trees. If you're in the Houston area, you can get those at Sunshine's Vegetarian Deli over near the Medical Center on Old Spanish Trail. But if you're anywhere else, you can, of course, order them online. It's the vegan popcorn, it's the Kimmy bars, it's the hand-whipped body butter. And this is what you can expect to find. All right. So listen, I am super excited to have somebody back on the show who hasn't been here for a while. He's super busy. We tried to have him last week, but he was all in the middle of what was happening at the pre-draft camp in Chicago, trying to get the Rockets the best lottery pick. No, he had nothing to do with that. Anyway, Kelly Eco is the beat writer that covers the NBA, primarily the Houston Rockets for The Athletic, and he is joining us today. Please help me welcome my friend and colleague, Kelly Eco. Hey, Kelly, I know this is a crazy busy time of year for you, so thank you for making some time to visit with us today. First of all, how are you? I know you've been busy. What's good in your world?
Same as always, just trying to see, these next couple of weeks what, the Rockets are going to do in terms of the number 4 pick and how that parlays into free agency and how that eventually parlays into their overall offseason and how Ime Udoka is trying to plan for, this next important phase two, of this thing going forward.
So before we get into, I'm going to delve into that and ask you some questions. I've been getting tons of questions and DMs about Rocket stuff. Before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about the playoffs.
Right.
Of course, last night the Denver Nuggets advanced. It's their first. They're going to make their first trip to the NBA Finals. They swept the Lakers, although it was, listen, that series could have very easily have been 2-2, right? They could be going back to Denver for Game 5. Your thoughts about what you saw in the Western Conference Finals in terms of the Lakers and where they're headed, and then what you saw from the Nuggets?
I think for the Lakers, first and foremost, this is a team that overachieved. Obviously, even though you do have, LeBron James and Anthony Davis, two of the, top 20 players in this league today, or top 15 really, you still have a roster that was, for a large part of the year, largely unbalanced. They had to mix some things along the way to trying to put things together, and fortunately for them, they were able to sneak into the playoffs. They went on a run to end the season. They took down the Memphis Grizzlies. That was one of the most popular series in a long time in the first round. They defeated the Golden State Warriors, which was really impressive. They were able to use their size and length and kind of take down the defending champs. And they ran into a real number one team in Denver. And we kind of saw why Denver has been so dominant all year long. For a lot of people that didn't watch them, this was kind of a surprise in terms of, the bubble playoffs and all the nonsense, what have you. But for the Lakers, they had a good year. They overachieved. They got to the conference finals for a 7th That for any year, that should be a plus. So I wouldn't take anything from them. For Denver, I think we're kind of seeing the dominance and them, impose their will on guys on a night-to-night basis. You're seeing Nikola Jokic and the marvelous player he is, being able to dominate the game from minute 1 to minute 48. We've seen Jamal Murray finally healthy and being able to contribute. We've seen key pickups in Bruce Brown and guys like along those lines that have been able to step in and contribute. Contagious, Caldwell-Pope, another one. The emergence of Michael Porter Jr. coming into his own as a rebounder and as a floor spacer, and just seeing a team under Michael Malone that has their eyes on the championship, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get to that plummet. So it's been a joy to see Denver on this stage on a night-to-night basis, kind of churning things out and putting teams in their place. So good playoff run.
It was a great. I couldn't agree more. I mean, the Lakers did overachieve, and of course, because of the kind of competitor that LeBron James is, he always expects to get to the next spot, right? He never gives up until the end. I'm going to ask you. So after the game last night, he was asked about his future a little bit, and he said, "We'll have to see." And so for me, I took it as it was an emotional series. It's been a long season. It just ended. I just think that players may have emotions in that moment that we should not pin them to.
Or read too much into it.
Don't read too much into it. I don't think he was, he said he has consistently said he'd play 2 more years, right, with the Lakers next year. And if his son gets to the league, maybe that year he'll think about something different. Right. But that's how I took it. Is that what you thought?
Yeah, I think just because of, everything that surrounds LeBron James and what he's done in this league for such a long time, the fact that all eyes were on this series and trying to see if the Lakers could somehow get to the NBA Finals against all odds.
Right.
Now, granted, if you take a step back and examine this series from a holistic standpoint, that never made any sense. They were never going to beat Denver 4 times, in this series. That Denver is too well old of a machine to do that. But just because LeBron is 38, he's been doing this for 20 years, and his body has been through a lot this season in terms of having to shoulder the load for these guys time and time again. Even in the closeout game, he put on a hell of a performance, and he's going to need time to recharge his body, kind of think about what the best thing for his going forward. But everyone knows he wants to play with his son. Everyone knows he still wants to go out on his terms, and this is not. I wouldn't classify this as going out on his terms. So I know just because his friend Carmelo retired the day before, and everything with the banana boat and all this stuff, that's everyone lean into that. But realistically, I expect LeBron to play next season. I'd be shocked if he actually retired right now.
I could not agree more, Kelly. Should we read anything into the fact that Kyrie Irving was sitting courtside last night?
I think you should. Hey,
Yeah.
Kyrie, everyone knows their relationship. Everyone knows that, the allure of the Lakers. And, Kyrie is in a situation where he's trying to figure out his important next steps. And if he does join the Lakers, hey, all credit to him. That would be a fantastic move for him. I think everyone wants to see that. But does it make sense from a basketball perspective? I'm pretty sure it does. But things have to go in place before a move like that happens because, Kyrie isn't a cheap player. And now with the new CBA, it's going to be even harder to keep 3 super highly paid players on one roster at a time without being able to flesh out the remaining of the roster. So that would be – it's going to be the talk of the summer. So I guess we'll just see.
We'll see what happens. Okay, so in the other side, there's the Celtics and the Heat. The Celtics have been dominating, right? They could actually close out tonight, which I don't know if this has ever happened. I probably
the Heat,
not that I can remember, where there have been both conference championships won with sweeps. But the Heat could win tonight, right? I expect the Heat to definitely win this series. I don't know if the Celtics find some way to find some life.
Right.
The Heat have been so dominant. Jimmy Butler, we've seen him through the years, but he just continues to get better. And they have other players, obviously, that have been a part of this run. I think I've been more surprised with what we've seen, or either haven't seen from the Celtics in this series.
I think when you break the series down, it comes down to Eric Spoelstra being able to outmaster Joe Mazzulla and his staff. And from the playing, like nobody expected Miami to be here outside of Miami, right? And
right.
They've been able to each round. They've been able to tactically outclass their opponent. Milwaukee, New York, now Boston, all by sheer will, all by sheer adjustments. We're seeing Jimmy Butler once again rising to that level that we've known him to come and see time and time again. We're seeing guys like Bam Adebayo step up defensively, guys like Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, Max Strus, guys that were at one point in their careers, they were trying to just make the roster. And now we're seeing them being integral parts of a potential championship team. And all credit to Jimmy Butler that he's the head of that snake and being able to set the tone for those guys going forward. Just being able to be the cultural and emotional leader of that franchise and having guys gravitate towards him. He's gotten a lot of flack in his career for being some kind of an abrasive player or someone that people didn't want to take to. But now we've seen him in Miami. There's no doubt that this guy is an alpha dog, and if you're not getting in line with him, it's probably a problem with you. So I think for Miami, rightfully so, they are going to they're going to try and see if they can get over the hump. If they get to the finals and then have to go against a real number 1 seed in Denver, that's going to be a tough challenge for them. Probably their toughest challenge all playoffs. But, I think if any team in the East was built for that challenge, it's the Miami Heat. So I'm excited to see how that plays out.
So you talked about Eric Spoelstra. I think he's probably not been given the credit over the years in terms of how good of a coach he is.
Right.
But does this speak to how great of a job Ime Udoka did last year when we see what's happening now with
I think it's underrated because, when you look at, Joe was part of Ime's staff, and Ime had that team on a string, and he was able to get the best out of all of his players at the right times. And he didn't win the finals, but just to even have that second half of the season that the Celtics had, the best defense in the league and coming within 2 wins of an NBA championship, that spoke to Ime's acumen. And Joe, was left to pick up the pieces after, the whole scandal, and he's done a admirable job, but, there's levels. And I think Joe is seeing that now on the biggest stage that Eric Spoelstra is coaching circles around him. And, there's no reason why a 2 seed or a team as stacked as Boston should be down 3-0 to an 8 seed that barely made the plan. There's no reason for that outside of, it comes down to coaching. And Joe, there's no excuse. Boston's roster, any team that has Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown should not be struggling for their playoff lives in any round. And yes, this is the conference finals, and the pressure might have gotten to the players, and they might have taken them for granted. But seeing Miami and seeing what they've come through, there's no reason to have taken them for granted. You know what they've done to good Eastern Conference teams.
Right.
These guys are
Right.
real dogs, and for them to have gone through all that, become battle tested, and they're essentially punking the Celtics on a night
Yeah.
to night basis, and their backs are against the wall now. Boston's backs are against the wall, and if they lose, and you've seen it across the league, like
Yeah.
teams will get rid of you now. Like you're seeing Monty
Hey.
Williams lose his job, Bud lose his job. Like things are going to happen if you don't get the job done against teams like this in this day and age in the NBA. So I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, it is. It's a new day in a number of ways. So you mentioned
Right.
that. I think it's a great segue to go in to talk about Ime Udoka, the Houston Rockets' new head coach. I know you have had a chance to visit with him more than some of us have. You got a chance to spend some time with him in Chicago. Your early
Right.
thoughts about what you heard from Ime and what you look forward to just from an Ime Udoka team.
I think right off the bat, Ime is going to command respect of the room. He's going to ensure that there's accountability from 1 through 15 that there might not have been in years past. He's going to ensure that there's a level of respect and there's a level of decorum that exists in the locker room. On the floor, he's going to demand guys buy into defense. They're going to buy into team concepts that they haven't in years past. Offensively, it's not going to be any more of the my turn, your turn thing that we're frankly seeing in Boston right now, and we saw in
Right.
Houston for parts of last season too. Ime is someone who's going to want everyone to share the ball. He wants guys to create for each other, but more importantly, he wants guys to have each other's backs. At the end of the day, this is a team, and you guys are in a tough spot being in the Western Conference and haven't had the worst record for last 2 or 3 years. It's not an easy thing to climb out of, but with the right pieces around them and they have the cap space to add the players that Ime aligns more with in terms of older, experienced guys that can come in and help these young guys grow and take that next leap. Then you can kind of see how these guys can eventually climb out of the rebuild, because the whole point of rebuilding is to build again in terms of win again and get back to the playoffs and stuff like that. And this is a franchise in Houston that has they've been a respectable franchise for a very long time. Like when you look at historically the number of teams that have made the playoffs on a yearly basis, the Rockets are up there in terms of top 5, top 7 most winningest, most consistent playoff franchises. So to get back to that stage, they're going to have to take a lot of lumps. They're going to have to take a lot of accountability, look in the mirror, and realize that what they've been doing for the last 2-3 years is wrong. It's flat out wrong. Like you can't build winning habits playing the kind of basketball you played for the last 2 seasons. Like you saw what happened last season with Steven Silas and how there was too much pressure for him and how he succumbed to the pressure of not being able to get those guys in order. And now Ime is coming in and it's a new sheriff in town. So I think right off the bat, he's already taken time to meet with those players, spend time with them, get dinners, watch workouts, kind of get to know them as people, more importantly, to learn how to use them as players. And I think that's something that we haven't seen in a while in Houston. So I think for these guys, it's a step in the right direction. Now, everything is going to come down to what happens in the draft, what happens in free agency in terms of how you reshape this roster, because frankly, it's a broken roster from top to bottom. It's not, there's no order. So it's going to be up to the front office and Ime to kind of get things right.
So you mentioned the roster, and I want to talk a little bit about that because, I think those of us who got a chance to work with Silas, you couldn't help but like Coach Silas as a person, right?
For sure.
And there were lots of questions about how much control he had over what happened on the court. Was that happening upstairs? Is it your thought that Ime Udoka is going to have complete control of basketball when it comes to what happens on the court?
There's no question.
Didn't happen before.
There's no question. He has the resume. The Rockets haven't had a finals appearing coach in a very long time. So
a very long time.
Just seeing what Ime has been able to do in Boston with those guys in such a short amount of time, even from his time in Brooklyn as an assistant in Philadelphia, this guy gets respect. People respect him. Players gravitate towards him. So when it comes to basketball, nobody's going to be stopping his practices. Nobody's going to be in his film sessions. It's going to be Ime's show, and he's going to run it from minute to end. I don't think there's going to be any question as to who's going to call the shots in terms of basketball. With this new roster and this new regime.
So I'm talking with Kelly Eco, the athletic beat writer that covers the Houston Rockets. He knows what's happening around the league, but his focus is on the Houston Rockets. What has stood out to you when you've just talked one-on-one with Ime to this point?
I think what stood out to me is his honesty in terms of what his assessment of the team, and what kind of went wrong. He's very good at saying something without saying it. So when I asked him about defense and asked him about accountability, he kind of pointed out that guys like Tari and Jabari, those are dogs. They have that dog mentality, but everyone needs to buy in. Everyone needs to want to get stops. Everyone needs to want to defend at a high level and as a collective unit for them to be where they want to be as a team. And he watched a lot of film on these guys before taking the job, before taking the interview. And you can kind of see, because if you take apart Houston's best moments from this season,
yeah,
a lot of things are impressive. Like, these are guys that are talented, they're young, they're fast, they want to get downhill, they can attack the paint, they try to crash the glass. The other stuff, the transition defense, the offense slowing down, getting to a halt, the lack of three-point shooting, the lack of offensive cohesion, all that boils down to players not developing at the rate that you want them to develop. Now, granted, when you have someone like Kevin Porter, who's not a point guard, who was brought in to be a point guard and has taken steps, but is still not a point guard, you're putting him with a guy in Jalen Green who's still trying to become what he considers himself a high-level player, a fully functional offensive shooting guard in terms of being able to create for himself, create for others. He's still not there yet. Then you have guys like Jabari, who struggled for most of the year offensively. Then you have Alp, who was in the lineup, out of the lineup. When he came in, struggled defensively. He still had his bright spots offensively. The effort was waning in and out. It was a mess. It was a mess.
It was a mess. Yeah.
And you were there. You saw all the games. You saw Steven try to explain what was going on, but everyone could see it. It was just a mess. And players, it seemed like they were playing for themselves at times. And you can't have that in the NBA where winning is at a premium. And you can't have that in the NBA when people's jobs are on the lines and security is not a stronghold thing. So Iman's gonna have his work cut out for him for sure, because this is not an easy job. Just from being here on a day-to-day basis is not an easy job. You're gonna have to fix things pretty quickly, because now you seeing what ownership is saying in terms of phase 2 was getting back to the playoffs. He didn't say Tom Fertitta didn't say this is still phase 1 where let's see what we have in the guys. No, he wants to win. He wants to win now. So you're gonna have some pressure behind you.
Well, because you think about it, when Tillman bought the team, they were a playoff team that was trying to get over the hump of the Golden State Warriors, and to see the team sink as far as it did, that is not in line with who the person that Tillman Fertitta is
at all. He probably look around like, what the hell did I come into?
What is happening?
For sure.
So we talk about things being at a premium, people, jobs on the line. We saw what happened with Doc Rivers. We saw it in
another one, Doc Rivers.
Another one with Doc, right, in Philadelphia. And there are many who blame in the organization off the record, James Harden for some of that. And of course, then there's James Harden, and all the word on the street says he wants to come back, and the Rockets want him. What do you say?
I mean, it makes sense, in terms of James for the past year, and I've heard this from a number of people too, that a lot of people in Philadelphia didn't take too kindly to Doc Rivers. And we've seen him in the past, like Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, like he hasn't always seen eye to eye with his guys. But when it came to James fundamentally changed his entire game plan or his style of play to fit to, appease Joel Embiid. But James always wants a lob threat. He wants to play with shooters around him, with defenders around him. He had to curtail his style, and frankly, it worked for a good chunk of the year because he led the league in assists. Joel Embiid got the MVP. Philadelphia had a pretty damn good team until they flamed out in the second round. But like James, he brings a level of control. He brings a level of offensive cohesion that this team has not seen since he left. He'll be able to get guys organized. He'll be able to just run the show like a well-oiled machine. These guys need a conductor. They need a quarterback. They have a lot of talented pieces, but they don't have the guy that's going to put things in order, that knows everyone, that knows the system or is the system, and they need that kind of help. And he's very close with Ime Udoka. So
Oh, is he? I was going to ask you that.
it makes from the time in Brooklyn, it makes a lot of sense that James wants to come back and Houston wants to get him. But, at this point, we don't know. We know the Rockets want to get him. We know they're going to go aggressive at him. But at the end of the day, the ball's in James' court, what he wants to do with his life and what he wants to do with his career.
Do you think that they would really give him a max contract at this point?
Or Houston?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I'd be shocked. No, they're not going to. They're not going to.
Because when you listen to his team or his camp talk about what he wants, right? Obviously, it's the money. It's the control. And my concern is this, Kelly. I mean, we've seen how great James can be offensively. There's
another
no
side
question about that.
Yeah.
Right. But there's that other side of him being kind of still immature, is what I'm going to call it. And, he is not the guy, if a series, not the game, but if a series is on the line, that I want to give the ball to because he doesn't want it. That's a problem for me. Like, that's a problem for me to turn over my franchise, because if he comes back, you're kind of turning your franchise back over to him. He's not going to come for anything less.
Well, I think internally, the hope is that James can kind of help Jalen be that guy that wants the ball. And we've seen parts of that from Jalen. He wants to be the guy. He wants to be the top dog in town. And he wants the ball with the last, shot to win the game. We've seen Jabari do that, in Houston. So hopefully the guy that they want to bring in James is a different version of the one that left, in terms of he's more sure of who he is. And hopefully for them, they're assuming that James wants to see the young guys take that next step to make the game easier for himself. Because we've seen James doesn't want to be that guy that has to, be the hero every night. It's too much pressure. It's too much toll. His body is breaking down slowly but surely. You've seen that. Father Time is catching up. He doesn't have the same burst he used to. He doesn't finish at the rim the same way he used to. The explosiveness has gone down, considerably some, but he's still a hell of a player. He's still a cerebral guy. He understands the game in ways that we'll never comprehend. And the Rockets just need smart guys in the room at the end of the day. Just get them smart basketball players that can help these guys learn, because frankly, for 2-3 years, they didn't learn much. We didn't see it on the court to say, oh, these guys are going to be good by year 4 and 5. No, it was a disaster. So getting somebody in James who does come with his thing, it is James. There is a whole aura that is James Harden. For Houston, for almost a decade he was here, but they took it, and if they had made that finals, you wouldn't hear anybody talking about James going to Vegas and then, all that stuff doesn't matter. Because he brought them as close as they've ever been, and almost how many years has it been since the Rockets
brought them as close as they'd already been, but he also couldn't get them over the hump.
That's true.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
but at the end of the day, when you go back to that Game 7, I'm not going to put everything on James Harden. He was going up against a dynasty and Golden State, and his backcourt partner wasn't available. So, and it took a historical. Them missing 27. I've never seen it for my life. They missed 27 threes in a row. And they were fighting the officials. It was everything. It was a lot going on over that series. But James is who James is. He's a guy that can get you there, but he might not be able to get you there if that makes sense. So,
are you concerned at all about, we talk a lot about culture and these young guys? I mean, this young group, they're a pretty good group, right? You don't really have any real
group of guys.
Head cases. There's a good group of guys.
Yeah.
Inserting James Harden into this group while they're still kind of in those formative years,
right?
Is he going to be a good influence on him? And I'm not talking about going to the strip clubs. I'm talking about beyond that.
Yeah.
So going to be what kind of influence is James Harden going to be on this young group?
So I think in terms of locker room, it's going to be a godsend, because those guys, he's highly respected amongst those players. You talk to them, they have him in very high regard. He has a lot of love for those young guys. He's called them out by name. He
Yeah.
worked out with them last summer for a long period of time. It makes a lot of sense. Like, it's a good people fit in terms of like it would be a familiar face, and you would be able to. Now, granted, and you've been in the locker room too. Kevin Porter Jr. got James' locker, so there's gonna have to be some reshuffling.
I was like, what's gonna happen? Is he gonna have to get out?
And
James
Jalen and
to one of those other lockers.
And Jalen typically has Eric's locker that's typically supposed to be the second. So because those are all double, the two lockers are double lockers. So
right,
there's gonna be some reshuffling in that locker room. So that part, everything after James is what I'm curious about. I don't know how the dynamics are gonna go from James to who's number 2 now, because Scoot still thinks he's the guy, and Jalen still thinks he's the guy, and I'm pretty sure soon Jabbar is gonna think. You have to sort that out. So that's why you need other adults in the room that can say, "Stop that," and this is how we're gonna go.
This is how we're going. Because we've also been in the room when the love affair with James and Dwight Howard went south, or the love affair with James and CP3 went south. It ain't pretty, and every time the organization has chosen James Harden. But, so those are some things I think about. Who's going to be the point guard? What's going to happen to KPJ?
Well, if and that's one thing that Ime, I talked to Ime about, but the sense I got just hearing him explain how to put guys in places to be successful, it sounds like he wants Kevin more off the ball. So, and Kevin's a natural wing. He's a wing scorer. Like, he's not a point guard. So
he's not. Right.
So James would be the de facto point guard, but Kevin can still run it in stints. He can still create for others at the 3. Like, it's not I wouldn't call it demotion, because that's not how he was brought up. He was brought up as a wing. So you're just putting him back to what he's comfortable with. And who knows? Like, Kevin says all the right things, but truth be told, who knows if he was actually comfortable with playing that, or he just had to do it because that was the best way to get on the floor. You know what I'm saying? Like, Kevin is a nice guy. He's going to say the right things. He's always going to take one for the team. But do we think that he was fully comfortable doing that?
Absolutely not.
I don't. He just kind of said it so many times. Affirmations. You say it every day. You say, I'm the point guard. Maybe you can be the point guard. But he's better suited as a wing scorer that can create for others. And that's by no means, demotion or anything.
So when you think about free agents, we've talked about James Harden. Another name that's come up has been Jaylen Brown with the Celtics, who has not been really willing to commit to them. I'm sure after this series, he's really not going to be super committed. You think because of his history with Ime Udoka, do you think he's the kind of guy that'd be a good fit for this Rockets organization? Or who stands out to you as these are some of the top? Here's kind of a hit list that they may look at in terms of free agents.
Well, Jalen, for free agency, they have to wait for him for next summer because he's still under contract.
Oh, that's right.
But I am still going to watch that as something to watch, because Jalen is extremely close to Ime. He was one of the biggest proponents of Ime getting hired by Boston in the first place, and him leaving took a toll on him for sure. But in terms of Houston's free agents, Brook Lopez for sure, Cam Johnson, Austin Reeves, guys like Dylan Brooks. Then you look at the lower tier guys like Porzingis. Then
I like Austin Reeves a lot.
Yeah, I think Austin Reeves would be a godsend for these guys. They
They
need someone that's gonna roll his sleeves up and do the work. Like
right.
Yeah, they need someone like that. He doesn't care about the pomp and circumstance and all the glamour and the glitz. He just wants to hoop, and I like Austin Reeves a lot. But elsewhere, if they don't get James, they still want to get a veteran point guard. So guys like Mike Conley, Jordan Clarkson, DiVincenzo, even Chris Paul, trying to bring Chris Paul back. Those are all on the table. So
not Chris Paul and James.
No, not together. Not together. One or the other. You ain't getting them both.
Getting them both.
They'll never do that again.
Artie says, would the Rockets trade Jalen or KPJ for a veteran or a star? I don't really see them trading Jalen, but what do you say?
I don't see them trading Jalen either. It doesn't really behoove them right now. It would have to be for something that's like you can't turn down. Like, because think about it. If you trade for a star, all this talk you've done about cap space, you're essentially gutting that cap space into someone. So it has to be someone that you're pretty damn sure of you want to have long term. So Jalen, I don't know. Kevin, maybe less so, but again, like it has to make sense for them. So I think for any player, anybody can be moved. I wouldn't say anyone's off the table, but
Right.
I'd be pretty shocked if they traded Jalen. I don't think they're trying to actively trade Jalen.
I wouldn't think that Jalen would be a guy that they would be, actively open to listening to deals on. I'd say the same thing about maybe Jabari, right?
I think those two guys are the safest guys, in my opinion.
They're the safest guys. I mean, I've always liked Tari, but that's another guy that, in terms of how he plays, might be a fit for what Ime wants to do.
For sure.
And so I think it's going to be interesting to think about who are some of the pieces that really could be a good fit for this Rockets team. And it's going to be fun to watch. Now, when we talk about the draft, of course, I was watching the lottery, and when they fell out of the top 3, I was like, so let me just say this. I never thought they were going to get one.
They were close, though. They were close. I was in the room.
I heard that. You said they were close.
They were extremely close.
I thought it was going to San Antonio all the time.
Yeah,
I just did. Something in my gut said it's going to the Spurs. Yeah. But I didn't think they'd fall out of the top 3.
Yeah, that was a shocker. That was a shocker.
So what do you think about you like the twin? What do you think about that 4 pick? Will they trade it or will they stay there?
I mean, my personal opinion, I think they traded, but it's kind of hard. The problem is that when you look at the NBA landscape, to find a trade with that number 4 pick, because it's a draft that's not, there's a bit of a drop off from 1 to 3 and then 4 to whatever.
Right.
You have to find a team that's willing to kind of press a mini reset button, but also has a player he might not be an A1 player, but he's still, a A2 or B, whatever you want to call it. Someone in that second tier of stars that a team that's stuck in the middle could theoretically trade for number 4 pick. Right. So, you look at someone like Miles Turner, if Indiana said that they wanted to fully press the reset button and build around Tyrese and Ben Mathurin and all those guys over there, and they were willing to move on from a Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, maybe, or a team like, let's say, Toronto, who no one knows what they're going to do. Right. If they want to come into this year and start anew, build around Scotty Barnes and stuff like that, and they're willing to let go of an OG Anunoby, do you do that? There are teams out there, but you have to find out, who's willing to press the reset button and who thinks that the number 4 pick is tantalizing enough to take a swing on.
Well, they would have to obviously package it with some other stuff.
Yeah.
So I wonder what that would ultimately look like. If you had to take and it's a wild guess because the draft hasn't happened, free agency hasn't happened.
Right.
You have any kind of like a look in your crystal ball and tell me who the starting 5 is next year for this Houston Rockets team?
Crystal ball. I'm gonna go James Harden, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith Jr., Brook Lopez.
Wow. Okay. So you feel pretty strongly about the James Harden possibility.
Yeah, I do.
I mean, we've been hearing it all season. Like we've been hearing it for a long time.
I mean, my God.
We've been hearing it for a long time.
Yeah. So if it don't happen, I'll be pretty surprised. But this is the NBA, anything can happen. But
anything can happen.
That would be my, that's what I think is what it looks like what is it, May 23rd? I might say tomorrow something different, but right now I think that's pretty good.
So let's talk about Ime's staff. He made a hire last week.
Right.
What do you expect? Do you expect any of the staff from the last
Boston
regime?
Yeah.
Well, Boston or from the last Rockets regime, any of those guys make it?
No.
Or is he going to start all over?
I think as far as the current Rockets guys, I think none of them. Maybe Mahmoud, but I wouldn't be too. I'm not sure if he's going to stick around either. I know at the combine he spent some time with them, watching the games and stuff like that. But he was also, at the end of the day, people have to look out for themselves, right? And
Well, that's true.
when you
You
have a
got to
new
bring in
coach,
your own crew,
yeah,
right?
and he may know he has guys that he's comfortable with. So why would
Yeah.
he want to go into a new job and take a chance on somebody he doesn't know? Like, that's why he wants to get those Boston guys and kind of see who's out there. You know, the Ben Sullivans and the Air Miles of the world and other guys around that,
Mm.
guys from Portland. You know, there are people that Ime is comfortable in and he's worked with in the past, and that's what he wants to work with now. It's pretty understandable. So, the Rockets even said that those guys were free to explore and find work elsewhere. And anytime you hear that, like,
Yeah, that's always a thing. Like, y'all might want to look around. I mean,
yeah,
that's a real nice way of saying, hey, go ahead.
yeah,
Look around. Look
yeah.
around.
So
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, and I don't mean it to do that, but
yeah,
in terms of putting together this roster,
mhm.
I feel like Rafael Stone, because everything he came up under the Daryl Morey kind of umbrella, if you will.
Yeah.
Is he the guy to take this team to the next phase of the rebuild? I mean, do you feel confident in what he knows from roster construction or just in team building that he's the guy to get this job done in conjunction, I guess, with Ime Udoka?
I think Ime makes a world of a difference. So I think this summer is going to give us the answer to that. Honestly,
Yeah.
they have the flexibility to do so. They have the aggressiveness. Rafael is a pretty aggressive general manager. We've seen him do a number of things. Now everything hasn't gone smoothly, but there's going to be hits and misses as a general manager. So it's not an easy job
Right.
at all. But I think the pressure's on him this summer to kind of deliver because if he doesn't. This is an ownership that Tim. Like those guys want to win.
Yeah.
And they want to win yesterday.
Tillman is not going to take this bottom dwelling part of the, not even just beyond the financial piece. That's always important. But he's got a bit of an ego, right?
Yeah,
he's not the guy
he's a billionaire.
Right, and they come with that, right? You don't really get there without having this. No, I want to be the dude, and I can't be the dude if I'm at. They can't be in the lottery next year. They can't be the worst team in the league next year.
They can't. If that happened, there's going to be sweeping changes across the board. I don't think Tillman would even. I don't even think he would wait a second for that. If they was in the bottom three again, oh my goodness.
Right. Yeah. Well, his sons. Tell us about his son. Patrick is very involved.
Right.
Is he kind of learning it on the job, or?
I think. I mean, you could have said that when he first arrived in 2017, but now I think he's pretty comfortable in his role. I think he's whatever liaison, I guess, between ownership and management.
Oh, I guess it has been 6 years, huh?
Yeah.
I forget how long it's been.
He's been here a long time. Okay. So I think by now he's pretty deeply entrenched in the day-to-day stuff with this team. But like I said, he's pretty in tune with those guys, Rafael and Ime now, and his dad, obviously Tillman. But as an owner, you have to be real with yourself in terms of the team you inherited, the team that you currently have, the transitional gap between those two and how to get back to winning, because at the end of the day, this is your investment property. This is your child, and right. I think Patrick and Tillman and all those guys, they understand kind of what's at stake in terms of having to turn this thing into a winner pretty soon. This is a city that for a long time they enjoyed the fruits of their labor in terms of being a contender and being in the playoffs, ticket sales. You've been in the games. The arena is different now. The energy in Toyota Center is different. And, those guys have to figure out a way to change that. And you change that by putting a better product on the floor.
So before I let you go, as we look at the current Rockets roster,
right,
is there anybody that you see on the roster right now that you like? I'd be surprised if he's back next year.
Surprised. I guess the end of the rotation guys like Daishin Nix.
Yeah.
I'd be pretty surprised if he's still there. I think who else would I be surprised? And it's crazy, but I don't want to say Usu Garuba, but because I think him and Josh, they're still talented guys, but because of how the development has panned out in terms of getting on the floor. I think
Mhm.
the odds are against those guys, but between now and then, I think they have enough time to prove to Ime and those guys that they should belong, and because they're good. Josh is a great player. He's a hardworking kid. He's a
He's
great
a
guy.
hardworking kid.
He
Yeah.
wants to work, and Oos is there's something in there. I think offensively he's gonna have to. And funny enough, Ooze was actually one of their better shooters last season, all things being considered, even though the volume wasn't there. But he has to really take that step quickly, or he might be out of the league. I think. But Ime, because Ime wants to win, and he I don't think Ime came in trying to. He may have said during the presser that was gonna take the guys and take the next step, but he also said that youth is not an excuse. So he don't want to hear none of that. He don't want to hear none of that reason as a means for failure. So I think it's good. The pressure is on a lot of those guys to kind of because if you're a 20-win team, I don't think any player should have a claim to a roster spot. That doesn't make any sense to me. So
I absolutely agree. I mean, and here's the thing, and this will be, and then I will let you go. So I think if we take away Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr.,
right?
Who else on this roster do you think has the biggest upside? I mean, is it an Alpi? Is it like Atari? Who do you think is like, with the right team around him, with the right coaching, he really can take his game to another level?
Wow. I think Tari.
Yeah.
Just because of just how he was able to impact the game defensively from when he was on the floor. Now, granted, offensively, he's still work in progress. Sometimes it can be a bit of a wrecking ball in the open floor.
Right.
But defensively, he has all the tools. He has all the tools to be a mainstay for a long time in this league. And for someone like Ime Udoka, who leans on defense a lot, I think those two will get along quite well. But granted, he still needs better players around him to help him improve his game. But he's a rookie, and he came into a situation of chaos. So I wouldn't really put too much stock into what you didn't see in year one from him.
Well, what I did see is what you saw. I liked his hustle. I liked the way that he would show up, and he played hard. He practices hard.
He cares. He cares. He cares about the game.
He really does care. So that's exciting. So tell us before you go, what are you working on, Kelly? What should I be looking out to see from you in the Athletic coming up soon?
More draft stuff. I still have this Jabari feature that I've been working on. It was on the back burner, but I'm gonna bring that back. My podcast, I brought it back up. I just finished recording an episode with Eric Gordon. So that should come out this week, I think. But that was good. That was good. He misses all you guys. So then stuff on free agency, stuff on trades, just more of the usual. So stick around, subscribe to the Athletic, subscribe to the ecosystem. We got more stuff coming for you.
Well, listen, you are the reason that I pay to go beyond the paywall, right? Because I don't do that for many publications, but I'm like, if I'm gonna read Kelly stuff, I'm gonna have to pay for the Athletic. So listen, I appreciate you. We'll do this before too much long again. I'm following. Keep up the great work, and thank you for taking some time out today.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. That's Kelly Eco. You can follow him on Twitter. I will post where you can see him. You can also get all of his stuff at The Athletic. He is a great voice to know what's happening around the NBA. And as promised, before we get out of here, I'm going to let you hear from some of the new Houston Rockets, new Houston Texans, which is really one of the reasons that we had a different showtime today, is because the regular showtime was at the very same time we had media availability with Coach Ryans and some of the team. So after OTAs today, we had a chance to interview and chat with Coach Ryans. And of course, one of the big questions that many of us have is what's going on with CJ Stroud? And so this is Coach Ryans answering the question, is there anything different, anything surprised you, or anything that you've seen from CJ now that he's actually been here in the building? What do you see? And here's Coach Ryan.
CJ's been the same from the pre-draft process to now. Hard worker, very intelligent guy. He's a true competitor. So he's been the exact same guy. Nothing has changed. just excited to see him out on the field, working with his teammates. CJ has been doing an excellent job these past couple days.
Since CJ was a number 2 overall pick, what's kind of the process towards getting him into the starting line as a open quarterback?
So, yeah, here's the thing I'll tell you what he said. Coach Ryan said, DeMeco said, it's getting better every day, right? He's not really, he said, we'll start thinking about, start looking at who's going to start in depth chart and all that stuff when you get closer to the fall. It's the spring, and now everybody's just trying to learn what they should be doing and to get better every day. And so we got a chance to talk to CJ, and he also talked about what's different for him. I asked him, what's different now that you are here in the league, right? Now that you've actually gotten here, what's the biggest change? And I always like to ask rookies that, because oftentimes you hear them talk about the speed of the game, but here's how CJ answered that. He said it was really about focus.
I don't know, man. It's for me, I think I'm a natural born competitor, so that's what I'm here to do. But at the same time, being a great teammate is more important. So that's what I've been on, just trying to embrace the relentless swarm that Coach Ryans wants us to be on. And that's what I plan to do, just be a great teammate, be a great leader, be vocal, be confident. I feel like I've done a decent job so far, but I got to keep growing every day. It's not going to be overnight. I'm going to have growing pains, things like that. But I think they're putting things around me, Davis, Case, and the quarterbacks to be successful and lead this team to win. So I'm excited to be in that room, to push each other, but at the same time help each other, which is more important.
Two more.
So he talked about being in the room, the quarterback room. So, of course, they signed Case Keenum, a veteran quarterback who has been a bit of a journeyman, played at University of Houston, has spent some time here with the Texans before. And he's always been credited for being a smart guy who's good to have in your quarterback room, especially when you're bringing younger players along. He may not have played in this system, but he's played in enough systems that he can be helpful. And then the other guy is Davis Mills. Davis Mills is still here. And no, I don't expect that he is your starting quarterback if you're a Houston Texans fan, but he is competing. And I think competition's good, right? That competition's good. You don't just sign a guy and turn the keys of the kingdom over. He's got to feel like, at least if the rest of us don't really think it's an option that Davis is going to be the starting quarterback, he's got to feel like he's got to work for it. And CJ has been very clear that I'm here to work. I like the room. I like the guys. I've gotten great support. This is what he says about being here. And I know that anything I do is I've got to earn it. And that's what I want to do, because that's who I am. He also talked a little bit about getting better and keeping the main thing.
About being with the ones, not about being with the twos, it's about getting better. This is what.
Whoops. Hold on.
About being with the ones, not about being with the twos, it's about getting better. This is what the spring is for, just learning the plays, getting the timing down, learning my receivers, learning Woods, learning Tank, learn how Nico runs his route, learn how Johnny runs his routes, how Dalton, just anybody I can learn from, and that's what I've been on. It's not about ones and twos right now, it's about just getting better as a whole, so we're getting ready for training camp. So that's been a blessing.
Yeah, he said it's not about the ones and twos. And the question was, well, you're running with the twos today because we got a chance to stay through all the practice. And so you can kind of tell when you see the, when you're watching the plays and how stuff is going, you can see like the ones and the twos. And he says you were running with the twos today. And that was his response. It's not even about that. It's about getting better every day. Listen, I want my rookie, if I was in charge, to have that mindset. Now, we are just in OTAs. We haven't even hit the veteran mini camp, which will happen in a couple of weeks. And then there'll be a break before they come back for training camp, which is when it's time to just, get down to the nitty gritty. But, he talked about just being here, being in the hotel room, learning, getting in his playbook, getting to know his players, and here's another thing I'll say. DeMeco said that the offensive line, he thinks, is going to be probably one of their best groups, right? They've done a lot of work to elevate the offensive line. They've got new coaching. They, of course, re-signed Laramie Tunzel, and they've got Titus Howard. They brought in Shaq Mason. You got Kenyon Green from last year, and so they've brought in some pieces that they hope, or that they see what they see already, what they like, what they're seeing from them. That this offensive line is going to be one of the high points in this team next year, which is exciting for a rookie quarterback. And I'm sure it's also exciting for Dameon Pierce in going into the second year. Now, one of the veterans that they signed in the offseason as a receiver, Robert Wood, here's him talking about what he's seen just in these few days from CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I would say a good leader already coming in, vocal, speaking up in meetings, being able to sit with them at the times in the quarterback meetings, hearing him ask some great questions, trying to pick apart the offense and grasp it pretty early. Out on the field, making some strong throws, good reads, good decisions, and that's really a good thing to start with a rookie quarterback coming in, being able to make the right decisions, know when to throw it, know when to pull it down, and good decision timing accuracy with the football.
Davis.
Listen, it's an exciting time for Texans fans. When I hear people talk about what they're seeing from the Texans, they're excited about the possibility. I don't think anybody should think that the team is headed for Vegas next year. And maybe, for those of you who've been talking about playoffs, I would just kind of say, pump the brakes on that, but definitely being more competitive, definitely being better. And while no one wants to really quantify what that means, right? Like, what's the number? What I will say is, here as we sit on May 23rd, there's an excitement around this organization and around this franchise that perhaps hasn't been here in a few years. And so here's another thing I want to say. I listen to some of my colleagues, and I'll tune in sometimes and listen to what others are saying, because I think perspective matters. And I know mine is a little different. I think it's great that there are different perspectives. But here's the thing that I don't like. I really hate that there are people in this market, and I say hate, and that's a strong word, that are still talking about David Culley in a way that is, quite frankly, it's just unnecessary. I mean, I don't understand what makes you call a man who's been gone for 2 seasons, who did nothing to you, right? Who wasn't disrespectful, he didn't act like Bill O'Brien did. Why call him a buffoon? Why take shots at it? He's gone. Like, he's not here. And so while in one sense you're celebrating DeMeco Ryans when he's asked about, how bad they were on third down last year, what about this year? And his response is something to the effect of, hey, we're focusing on the 2023 Texans. That's what we're doing. And you celebrate that. Like the people I'm talking about, they celebrate that. Oh, that's great that DeMeco's taking that position. Then you should too. There's no reason to keep talking about David Culley or even a Lovie Smith, right? Those guys are not the coach anymore. There's no reason for that. And that's just it's a pet peeve of mine, whoever they are. I just think it's kind of silly. And there's got to be other ways to do this work without having to keep, dog out people who, did they affect your life? Anyway, that's just me. That's kind of where I am on that. I wanted to share. Before I go, I did say we wanted to talk a little bit about the Astros. For those of you who were hitting the panic button because they were below 500 for the first, for a little period of time, well, the Astros are not that now. They've won 8 in a row, including a 12-2 win last night over the Brewers. They've won 9 of their last 10. They are now 28-19 with a .596 winning percentage. And they're 1 game behind the Texas Rangers for first place in the American League West. Altuve is back. He's still getting his timing down. Mauricio Dubon was amazing filling in for Jose Altuve and now goes back to kind of a utility role, came in last night and was obviously had a very good showing. Yordan Alvarez, if he stays healthy, obviously he will be a guy that you have to look at and say, maybe he is someone. I mean, he will obviously be in the conversation about MVP. But last night the Astros had 15 hits. They scored 12 runs on 15 hits. Christian Javier, who is continuing to pitch lights out. He is 5-1 on this season. He pitched 6 innings last night, 1 earned run, 5 strikeouts, and 1 walk. So, listen, they're coming around. I mean, they're getting in their groove. It's May. You don't want to flame out too early because you could be like I'm just going to say it, the Yankees, who who are great in the spring, but they've not been able to do anything when it counts, which is postseason. So I'm just going to leave it right there. Listen, thank you guys for being flexible with today's time schedule. It's not a lot that I change the time of the show, but when I do, it's usually because of something like today, availability to talk to some of the players, and won't have a chance to talk to CJ Stroud again until probably training camp. Maybe there's a mini camp coming up in June, maybe then, but didn't want to miss an opportunity to be able to bring you some sound from CJ Stroud today. And there's others. I'll let you hear from others, and even Davis Mills, for those of you who might be interested throughout the week, because we will have access to some additional players next week when we get to go out to OTAs on next Wednesday. But for now, that's what we got. So listen, remember, if you are not registered to vote, get registered, right? If you get registered, if you stay registered, then you don't have to worry about it when an election comes up, right? And so it's very, very important, no matter where you are in the country, and especially if you live here in the state where I do in Texas. Y'all, we gotta change some things. I never tell you how to vote, but I am going to encourage you to be an educated voter, be registered so that you can be a voter, and then you can vote your values and vote what makes sense for your family and for your community. I'm also going to remind you to, if you've not been vaccinated, I'm going to still encourage you to get the COVID vaccine. It is not gone, and I just encourage us to really all be, prepared and to be safe. So I'm going to encourage you to do that. And also a reminder about CHAMP. It's an organization that provides services for veterans, and you can get more information at info@champ.net, info@champ.net if you want to support some veterans, or if you need to access support for veterans. You will not be disappointed. And here's the thing, another number I want you to commit to memory. It's 988. If you see somebody in what looks to be somewhat of a crisis, having a mental episode or some sort of a breakdown, call 988 so that they can get the help they need. If you know somebody who's teetering and having maybe some suicidal episodes, 988 is a great number that you can call to provide support. And don't forget about our good friends over at I Love Jinka, right? You can go into HEB stores. You can go to ilovejinka.com. You want to add Jinka to your daily regimen, whether it's you get the paste and make it into a latte, or in some apple juice, or in a smoothie, or, or in your coffee. Or you want to take the vegan veggie caps. If you want the veggie caps, you just want to get that goodness in your body so that you can avoid inflammation. And if you are going in to get it in person at an HEB, this is what you should look for.
Here at HEB, in the Healthy Living Department, the probiotics, you can find Jinka 7 days a week.
Yep. Look at a lot of Jinka sale. Look at that. Jinka.
And of course, don't forget about Kimmy Treats. You can go to, if you're in Houston, Sunshine's Vegetarian Deli over near the Medical Center on Old Spanish Trail. They've got all kinds of great stuff, but look for Kimmy Treats. Get your vegan popcorn. Kimmy bars are back in stock, and also the hand whipped body butter. And you can always, if you're not in the market, you can always get it online at kimmytreats.com. All right, thank you guys again for being flexible with today's showtime. If you are watching the replay or if you watched it live, please share this with your audience. If you'll share this with them, I'd be super, super grateful. And remember, do something kind for yourself and do something kind for somebody else. I'll see you next Tuesday at 11 a.m. right back here. But in the meantime, follow me across all my platforms. I'll have updates for you. And how about those Astros? They're back in action tonight, and Game 4 of the NBA Eastern Conference Finals. I'll see you all next week. Have a good one, everybody.